Brain-computer interfaces sound like the moment humanity plugs a USB-C cable into the soul, which is a dramatic image. Also, please do not plug anything into your soul. The warranty situation is unclear. But here's the real version. The future of BC is not starting with telepathy. It is not starting with superhumans. It is not starting with normal people ordering coffee by silently thinking, medium iced latte, oat milk, extra dignity. The first revolution is much more human than that. It starts with someone who cannot move using neural signals to control a cursor. It starts with someone who cannot speak getting a synthetic voice back. It starts with someone whose body stopped obeying them getting a little control returned. That is the emotional core of this technology. Not, I want to control my smart toaster with my thoughts. More like, I want to communicate. I want to move. I want to choose. I want to be less trapped inside my own body. And that is why BCIs matter. Because if this technology works, it does not just add a gadget to your life. It restores a missing bridge between intention and action. That bridge is something most of us take for granted every second of every day. You think and your hand moves. You decide and your mouth speaks. You want something and your body does the negotiation. For millions of people, that bridge is damaged. Brain-computer interfaces are the attempt to build a new bridge. So yes, this is science fiction becoming hardware. But the reality is more specific, more serious, and honestly, more powerful than the sci-fi posters promised. The future is not mind reading. The future is control. Chapter 1. What a BCI actually is. Let's explain what a brain-computer interface actually is without drowning in lab coat fog. A BCI is a system that takes signals from the nervous system and translates them into commands a machine can understand. Brain signal in, machine action out. That's the simple version. The machine might be a computer cursor, a robotic arm, a speech system, a prosthetic hand, a smart home device, a wheelchair, or eventually, maybe, a much larger digital environment. But the core idea is always the same. The person intends something, the system decodes the signal, and the outside world responds. That is the whole magic trick. Now, there are different ways to do this. Some BCIs are invasive, meaning electrodes are implanted inside the body, often near or on the brain. Those systems can capture higher quality signals, but they require surgery, medical oversight, and long-term safety data. That's the serious medical frontier. Other BCIs are non-invasive, meaning they try to read signals from outside the skull, usually through headsets or sensors on the scalp. Those are safer and easier to imagine as consumer devices, but the signal is usually weaker, blurrier, and harder to use for high bandwidth control. That's the trade. Better signal usually means more risk. Lower risk usually means weaker control. And that trade is why the hype gets messy. People hear brain-computer interface and jump straight to cyberpunk. But the serious regulatory path is still mostly medical. Paralysis, spinal cord injury, ALS, amputation, speech loss, loss of motor control. That tells you where the evidence is strongest. The first normal use of BCIs will not be a healthy person upgrading their gaming setup. It will be a patient gaining a new way to communicate. And that is not less exciting, it is more important. Because controlling a cursor might sound boring until you can no longer move your hands. Typing a sentence might sound ordinary until speech has been taken from you. Turning on a light might sound small until you need another person to do it every single time. This is where the reality lens matters. A BCI is not valuable because it feels futuristic. It is valuable when it gives a person back agency. And agency is the whole game. That's why I want to separate 3 lanes very clearly. Lane 1, medical restoration. This is where BCIs are most real right now, restoring communication, cursor control, movement assistance, and independence. Lane 2, assistive independence. This is the bridge from clinic to daily life. Smart home control, computer access, robotic assistance, maybe wheelchair or prosthetic control. Lane 3, enhancement. Healthy people using BCIs for productivity, gaming, defense, or weird rich person nonsense. That third lane gets the headlines because it sounds like a Netflix pitch. But the first lane is where the revolution is already beginning. And that is the first big correction. BCIs are not becoming real because they let normal people become superhuman. They are becoming real because they may let people who lost control get some control back. Chapter 2. The present is already here. Now let's expand into the present, because this is where the story stops being hypothetical. BCIs are not mainstream yet, but they are also not just lab mythology anymore. Neuralink is the loudest name, obviously, because Elon Musk companies have a natural ability to turn every product update into a weather event. But Neuralink is not the whole field. The current BCI landscape is more like a weird competitive ecosystem. You have Neuralink pursuing high channel count invasive implants and robotic surgery. You have Synchron using an endovascular approach, placing electrodes through blood vessels instead of opening the skull in the same way. You have BlackRock Neurotech and long-running academic programs with deep experience in implanted neural interfaces. You have China accelerating medical BCI commercialization. You have university teams pushing speech restoration and typing systems forward. You have military and defense programs exploring non-surgical interfaces for able-bodied users. That matters because when people reduce BCIs to one company, they miss the real trend. This is not one billionaire's moonshot. This is a field maturing from scattered breakthroughs into early medical infrastructure. And the strongest evidence right now is not the flashy stuff, it's communication. Recent speech neuroprosthesis work has shown systems that decode intended speech and convert it into text or synthetic voice. That is emotionally massive. Because speech is not just output, speech is presence. It is how you interrupt, how you joke, how you argue, how you say yes and no without waiting for someone else to guess what you mean. For someone with paralysis or ALS, restoring faster communication is not a convenience feature. It is a piece of personhood returning to the room. That is why speech BCIs may end up being one of the most important near-term applications. Cursor control is useful, robotic arms are impressive, but communication is intimate. Typing BCIs are also getting better. Recent work has shown people with paralysis using attempted finger movements to type through an implanted BCI system. That sounds technical, but the idea is deeply practical. Instead of asking the person to learn some strange mental command language, the system listens to the attempted movement patterns the brain already knows. In other words, the person tries to type, and the system decodes the intention. That is the kind of progress that turns a miracle into a tool. And then there are daily control examples. Synchron has demonstrated BCI-enabled smart home control, including hands-free and voice-free interaction with systems like Alexa. That is where the future starts feeling less like a lab demo and more like independence. Imagine not being able to move your hands or speak clearly, but still able to control lights, call someone, choose entertainment, send messages, adjust your environment. That is not mind control in the Hollywood sense. That is access. And access is the boring word for freedom. Now, the present still has hard limits. These systems are early. They involve small numbers of patients. Many require surgery. They require calibration. They require training. They require medical teams, research support, and careful follow-up. They are not plug and play. They are not cheap. They are not something you impulse buy because your mouse hand got tired. But that is normal for a serious medical technology. The first pacemakers were not sleek consumer gadgets. The first cochlear implants were not a lifestyle trend. The first advanced prosthetics were not mass-market accessories. Medical technology often becomes normal by passing through the most urgent need first. That is probably what happens here. BCIs become more common not because everyone wants one. They become more common because the people who need them most prove the value first.
Chapter 3. The next 2 years.
Now let's look at the next year or two. This is the window where BCIs probably become more visible, more commercial, and more politically important, even if they are still not normal consumer products. The near future is not everyone gets a brain implant. The near future is more clinical trials, more patients, more at-home use, more regulatory movement, more international competition, and more proof that the technology can survive outside the perfect conditions of a lab. That last part is crucial. A lab demo is one thing. A person using a BCI at home, day after day, with less expert babysitting, is a very different level of reality. That is the test. Can the implant remain stable? Can the decoding stay accurate? Can the user rely on it without constant recalibration? Can the system handle fatigue, disease progression, signal changes, software updates, hardware wear, and normal life being rude? Normal life is always rude. It spills things, it moves furniture, it has bad Wi-Fi, it updates drivers at the worst possible moment. It asks medical hardware to perform while somebody's cat is walking across the keyboard. That is why the next 2 years matters so much. Neuralink has said it wants high-volume implant production and more automated surgical procedures. Treat that as ambition, not guaranteed reality. But the ambition tells us where the field wants to go. From heroic one-off procedures to repeatable medical infrastructure. That phrase matters. Repeatable medical infrastructure. If BCIs are going to become common, surgery cannot remain a heroic event every time. Training cannot be a bespoke research project forever. Devices cannot require genius-level support to keep working. The whole system has to become more standardized. That means better implants, better surgical workflows, better decoding software, better patient selection, better support, better reimbursement, better regulation, better data on durability. Not glamorous, absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, China's approval of a commercial BCI medical device is a major signal that this is becoming international. It means BCI development is not just an American tech story. It is a medical, industrial, and geopolitical race. China approving a BCI device for spinal cord injury patients does not mean the technology is suddenly solved. But it does show that regulators and companies are beginning to move from research promise toward market access. That is a huge threshold. And once one market moves, others pay attention. The next phase will likely bring more announcements like this. More feasibility studies, more first-in-human results, more limited approvals, more trials focused on paralysis, ALS, spinal cord injury, and assistive communication. The hype will try to turn every update into brain chips are here. Don't fall for that. The better update signal is more boring. How many patients? How long did it work? Was it used at home? What could they control? What failed? What risks showed up? Was the device stable over months and years? That is how you track real progress. And then there is the non-invasive lane. This is the one normal people are most likely to encounter first, because nobody needs surgery to wear a headset. But non-invasive BCIs have a bandwidth problem. Reading brain signals from outside the skull is like trying to hear a conversation through a wall during a thunderstorm. You might get something useful, but don't pretend it is the same as a direct implant. So in the next year or two, expect lots of consumer-ish claims around focus tracking, gaming control, wellness, productivity, and meditation. Some may be useful. Some will be glorified headbands wearing a lab coat. The test is simple. What can it actually control, reliably, that is better than a button? Because if a BCI is slower, less reliable, and more annoying than a normal interface, it is not the future. It is a worse mouse with forehead drama. Near-term BCIs get more common through medicine first. Consumer BCIs get more common only when they solve a real interface problem better than existing tools.
Chapter 4. 5 to 10 years out. Now let's jump 5 to 10 years out.
This is where speculation becomes tempting, so we need to stay disciplined. The most likely future is not one giant leap into human-machine fusion. It is a layered expansion. First, medical BC1s become more normal for severe cases. More people with paralysis, ALS, spinal cord injury, or speech loss gain access to systems that let them communicate, control devices, and interact with digital environments. Not millions overnight, but enough that BC1s stop feeling like unicorn surgery and start feeling like a specialized medical category. That would already be a revolution. Second, assistive BC1s expand into daily life. Instead of just controlling a cursor in a demo, the system connects to smart home devices, communication tools, wheelchairs, robotic arms, prosthetics, and personal computing. The BCY becomes less of a single device and more of an access layer. That is the key phrase, access layer, a bridge between intention and the digital or physical world. Third, the hardware may get less invasive, or at least less intimidating. Not necessarily non-invasive magic, but more minimally invasive approaches, better surgical robots, more stable electrodes, wireless systems, longer-lasting implants, cleaner replacement pathways, lower risk. If that happens, the adoption curve changes. A technology does not have to become risk-free to become common. It has to become worth the risk for a growing group of people. That is how medicine works. Fourth, we start seeing the privacy fight get serious, because as BC1s improve, the data gets more sensitive. At first, a BCY might only decode a limited set of intended movements or attempted speech patterns. But even that is intimate. You are not just collecting clicks, you are collecting signals from the nervous system, and that means neural privacy becomes more than a phrase for conference panels. Who owns the data? Can it be sold? Can it be subpoenaed? Can it be hacked? Can insurers use it? Can employers demand it? Can a company lock a person's communication system behind subscriptions or cloud services? That is where this gets uncomfortable. The moment a device becomes the bridge between your intention and your ability to act, it stops being just a device. It becomes part of your autonomy. And anything that touches autonomy needs stronger rules than a fitness tracker. Fifth, enhancement starts creeping in around the edges. Not because healthy people suddenly need implants to control Spotify, because the boundary between therapy and enhancement is always messy. A person with paralysis using a BCY to type is restoration. A surgeon using neural control for precision tools might be augmentation. A soldier using a non-surgical interface for faster machine control is enhancement adjacent. A gamer wanting brain control because it sounds cool is probably a marketing department with electrodes. The next decade may not give us consumer brain implants, but it may give us professional, medical, military, and accessibility use cases that slowly normalize the idea of direct neural interfaces. That is how weird technology becomes normal. Not all at once, through urgent use first, then specialized use, then convenience. Then culture catches up and pretends it was obvious. So what should we expect? Best case, BC1s become a life-changing medical platform. People who lost speech regain faster communication. People with paralysis gain better computer and device control. Prosthetics become more intuitive. Smart homes become more accessible. The technology stays medical first, privacy aware, and responsibly regulated. Most likely, BC1s grow steadily but unevenly. The best results remain invasive and medical. Non-invasive consumer versions remain lower bandwidth. The headlines run far ahead of daily reality. But the field keeps moving because the use cases are too important to ignore. Worst case, the technology gets over-marketed before it matures. Companies sell vague brain control narratives. Privacy protections lag. Access becomes expensive and unequal. And the people who most need the technology get buried under hype aimed at people who mostly want a futuristic toy. That is the reality filter. BC1s are real. They are becoming more common. But the first normal version is not superhuman enhancement. It is restoration. It is independence. It is control returning to people who lost it. And eventually, yes, that same technology may spill outward into broader human-computer interaction. But if we tell the story honestly, the BCY future does not begin with a billionaire controlling a drone swarm by thought. It begins with someone typing again, helping those in need. And the question is not just whether we can build that future. It is whether we can build it without selling the nervous system to the highest bidder. Subscribe to join the expedition.